Tonight, we begin a journey into stillness and shadow, a gentle exploration of forgotten places where secrets rest in silence. We stand now at the threshold of Mercy General Hospital's East Wing, where time has stopped its relentless march and allowed the past to settle like dust in amber light. The entrance before us, with its arched doorway and peeling paint, invites us not with fear, but with the promise of stories waiting to be heard. Whispered tales that will carry us softly towards sleep. The air here is cool and still, untouched by the world outside, and as we step forward, we leave behind the weight of our waking hours. This place, abandoned for decades, holds within its walls the echoes of countless lives, and tonight we will walk among them with gentle curiosity, allowing their mysteries to wrap around us like a familiar blanket. The darkness here is not something to fear, but rather a comforting veil that softens every edge, every corner, every shadow that stretches across the worn linoleum floors. Let us move slowly, breathing deeply as we cross this threshold together. For within these walls we will find not terror but the deep, abiding peace that comes from stories finally being told. The hospital waits patiently, as it has waited for so long, ready to share its secrets with those willing to listen. And in listening, we will find ourselves drifting, floating, releasing into the gentle embrace of forgotten memory. Each step we take will be slower than the last, each breath deeper and more relaxed as we allow this place to hold us in its ancient, quiet arms. Welcome to the East Wing. Welcome to the beginning of your journey into the most restful darkness you have ever known. We move now down the corridor of the East Wing, our footsteps barely audible on floors that have not known human presence in many years. The hallway stretches before us, long and narrow, lined on both sides with doors that hang slightly ajar, as if inviting us to peek inside, to discover what has been left behind. The wallpaper, once a pale green, has faded to the softest shade of seafoam, curling at the edges where moisture has worked its patient magic over the decades. There is something almost hypnotic about this decay, the way nature slowly reclaims what was built, the way time softens all things into gentleness. Along the walls, we notice old photographs in tarnished frames, doctors in white coats, nurses with kind faces, patients who have long since passed from this world into whatever rest awaits us all. Their sepia-toned faces watch us with expressions neither welcoming nor unwelcoming, simply present, simply existing in this space between memory and forgetting. We pause at the first examination room, its door marked with the number 3 in brass that has oxidized to a gentle green. Inside, an examination table sits covered in a thin layer of dust that sparkles faintly in the dim light filtering through cracked Venetian blinds. Medical instruments rest on a tray beside the table. Tools of healing now silent, their purpose fulfilled, their work complete. There is no urgency here, no need to rush or worry. Everything in this place has already happened, every story already unfolded, and all that remains is the gentle telling of it. We breathe in the musty air, thick with the scent of old paper and abandonment, and find it strangely comforting. A reminder that all things pass, all things fade, all things eventually find their rest. The shadows in the corners seem to pulse slowly, like a heartbeat, or perhaps like the rhythm of deep, peaceful breathing. As we continue down the hallway, we notice a file cabinet standing against the wall, its drawers pulled open as if someone left in a hurry, leaving behind papers that spill onto the floor in a cascade of forgotten names and forgotten ailments. We do not need to read them to know their stories. We can feel them in the air, gentle whispers that speak of lives lived, of suffering endured, of healing sought and sometimes found. Deeper into the East Wing now, we discover what was once the laboratory of Dr. Helena Marsh, a name that appears again and again in the documents we find scattered across old wooden desks and metal filing cabinets. Dr. Marsh, we learn through these yellowed papers, was a pioneer in sleep therapy during the 1950s, a time when the mysteries of sleep were just beginning to be explored by medical science. Her laboratory, though now draped in cobwebs and shadow, still holds the equipment she used, strange machines with dials and meters, their purposes now obscure, but their presence somehow soothing in its obsolescence. We can imagine her here, night after night, monitoring her patients as they drifted into sleep, recording their brain waves, their eye movements, the depth and quality of their rest. What was she searching for in those quiet hours? What secrets did she hope to unlock in the territory between waking and dreaming? The papers tell us of her theories, that sleep could heal not just the body but the deepest wounds of the mind, that in the vulnerable state of slumber, the psyche could be gently reshaped, old traumas smoothed away like wrinkles from a well-ironed sheet. Her methods were controversial, we read, though the specifics blur as our eyes grow heavy scanning the faded typewritten text. There were concerns, whispers among the hospital board, questions about consent and about what exactly her patients experienced during their monitored sleep. But reading these accounts now in this quiet place, we feel no alarm, only a gentle curiosity and a growing drowsiness. Perhaps Dr. Marsh was simply ahead of her time, understanding something that we are only now beginning to appreciate, that sleep is sacred, that dreams are doorways, that rest is the greatest medicine of all. We find her journal, leather-bound and water-stained, lying open on a desk as if she had just stepped away for a moment and would return at any second. Her handwriting is elegant, flowing, each letter carefully formed, and we read her words slowly, letting them wash over us like a gentle tide. Patient 47 entered deep sleep at 11:42 p.m., she writes, and remained in theta state for unprecedented duration. Upon waking, reported vivid dreams of childhood home and expressed feeling of profound peace. We smile softly at this, the idea that someone, decades ago, found profound peace in this very building, guided there by Dr. Marsh's gentle hand. The laboratory around us seems to hum with a subtle energy, not frightening but comforting, as if the countless hours of sleep studied here have left their mark, saturating the walls with deep, restful vibrations. We move with increasing slowness now, our limbs growing heavier, our breathing deeper and more rhythmic as we explore the treatment rooms where Dr. Marsh's sleep therapy was administered. Each small room contains a bed, simple and narrow, with metal frames that have rusted to a warm, reddish-brown patina. The mattresses are long gone, but we can imagine them, soft and supportive, covered in crisp white linens that smelled of lavender and soap. Above each bed, we notice small speakers mounted in the corners of the ceiling, and we realize that Dr. Marsh must have used sound as part of her therapy. Gentle music, perhaps, or the soothing rhythm of ocean waves, or maybe just the sound of breathing, slow and steady, a guide for patients to follow down into the depths of restorative sleep. The walls of these rooms are painted in the softest shades, pale blues and gentle greens, colors chosen deliberately to calm the nervous system, to signal to the body that this is a place of safety and rest. We step into one of the rooms and find ourselves drawn to sit on the edge of where the bed once stood, our hands resting gently on the cool metal frame. The room embraces us with its quietness, a silence so complete that we can hear our own heartbeat, steady and slow, like a drum calling us deeper into relaxation. On the wall, there is a chart, faded now but still legible, showing the stages of sleep: light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, each illustrated with simple, soothing graphics that seem to invite us to experience them for ourselves. We notice how the light in this room has a particular quality. Filtered through decades of grime on the window, it arrives soft and diffused, golden and amber, creating shadows that do not startle, but rather comfort, like the shadows in a bedroom at twilight when sleep is just beginning to call. There is a small table beside where the bed stood, and on it sits a glass of water, still somehow present after all these years. Though surely it is just a trick of memory, a ghost of the countless glasses of water that sat on countless bedside tables for countless patients seeking rest. We feel ourselves sinking deeper into calm with each breath, each moment in this space that was designed intentionally and carefully to facilitate the most natural process in the world, the surrender to sleep. Dr. Marsh understood something essential, we think, our thoughts growing slower and more dreamlike. She understood that sleep is not something to be forced or feared, but rather something to be invited, welcomed, allowed to arrive in its own gentle time. As we prepare to leave the East Wing, we find ourselves in Dr. Marsh's private office, the final room in our exploration of this forgotten place. Here, surrounded by bookshelves filled with medical journals and sleep research texts, their spines faded to gentle browns and grays, we discover the heart of her work, not in the data or the equipment, but in the letters. Dozens of letters, perhaps hundreds, neatly filed in boxes stacked along one wall. Letters from former patients, written years after their treatment, expressing gratitude for the rest they found under her care. We read a few, our eyes barely focusing now, our consciousness beginning to drift. Dear Dr. Marsh, I wanted you to know that since my time at Mercy General, I have slept peacefully every night. The nightmares that plagued me for years have not returned. Another letter, in different handwriting. I think of my time in your care as a kind of rebirth. I learned to trust sleep again, to surrender to it without fear. These words, written so long ago by people now surely gone from this world, carry a weight of peace that settles over us like a heavy, comfortable quilt. We realize that whatever controversy surrounded Dr. Marsh's methods, whatever questions were raised about her unconventional approach, the truth lies here in these grateful words. She helped people find rest, and in doing so, she gave them back their lives. The office is dimly lit now, the last light of day fading from the window, and we sit in the old chair behind her desk, our bodies sinking into its worn leather, our head tilting back slightly, our eyes closing for just a moment. And in that moment, we understand the East Wing completely. It is not a place of horror or fear, but rather a place where the quest for rest was taken seriously, where sleep was honored as the profound mystery it truly is. The shadows that dance across the walls seem gentler now, almost protective, as if Dr. Marsh herself watches over this space still, guiding visitors into the same peaceful state she worked so tirelessly to provide her patients. We feel no need to hurry from this place. Instead, we allow ourselves to simply be here, breathing slowly, deeply, feeling the weight of our body, the softness of our breath, the gradual, inevitable pull towards sleep. The secrets of the East Wing are no longer unsettling, but comforting. They speak of dedication to rest, of the pursuit of peaceful sleep, of the gentle passage from waking into dreams. And as we finally rise from the chair and make our way slowly back down the corridor toward the exit, we carry with us this gift. The understanding that sleep is not something to be feared or fought, but rather the most natural homecoming. The return to a place we have always known, where we are safe and held and allowed, finally to let go completely. And so, carrying this newfound wisdom like a warm lantern in our hands, we turn now toward the stairwell, where stone steps worn smooth by decades of footfalls beckon us upward. The air grows cooler as we ascend, each step a quiet meditation, our hand gliding along the metal banister that feels somehow familiar beneath our fingertips. One floor, then two, then three. And now we arrive at the fourth landing, where a faded sign still clings to the wall, its lettering barely visible in the dim light: Psychiatric Ward, staff access only. The heavy door before us stands slightly ajar, as though it has been waiting patiently all these years for someone to return, for someone to listen to the stories that echo in the spaces between silence. We push gently, and the door yields with a long, low creak that resonates through the corridor beyond, a sound that is neither welcoming nor forbidding, but simply present. The hallway that stretches before us is narrower than those below, the ceiling lower, creating an embrace of architecture that draws us inward. Moonlight filters through tall windows at the far end, casting long rectangles of pale blue light across linoleum floors that once gleamed white, but now bear the patina of time, swirled patterns of gray and amber where water has seeped and settled over countless seasons. Along both walls, doors stand at regular intervals, some open, some closed, each one a portal to stories we are only beginning to understand. The air here carries a different quality, something heavier, more textured, as though the emotions and experiences of those who walked these halls have become part of the atmosphere itself, molecules of memory suspended in time. We breathe it in slowly, allowing it to become part of us, and as we do, we feel no fear, only a deep, abiding curiosity tinged with compassion. This was a place of struggle, yes, but also of hope, of healing attempts made with the knowledge available, of human beings trying their best in an era that understood so little about the landscape of the mind. As we take our first steps down this corridor, we notice the sound of water, a rhythmic drip, 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 somewhere distant, a metronome marking time in the darkness, and our footfalls seem to synchronize with it naturally, our breath finding the same slow, steady rhythm. The repetition is not annoying, but soothing, a lullaby played on the simplest instrument, and we allow it to guide us deeper into the ward, where the secrets of the night shifts wait to be discovered. The first door to our right hangs open, and we pause at its threshold, looking into what was once a common room, a space where patients gathered during the day. Scattered furniture remains, chairs pushed against walls, a small table tilted on 3 legs, and in the corner an old television set, its screen dark and reflecting the room back to itself like a mirror into the past. On the walls we can see where artwork once hung, lighter rectangles marking their absence. And we imagine the paintings that might have been chosen, perhaps landscapes meant to calm, horizons meant to suggest possibility. Near the window, a bookshelf stands nearly empty, save for a few volumes that remain, their spines faded to illegibility. We step inside, our footfalls muffled by a rug that has become one with the floor, its pattern long ago surrendered to dust and time. Moving to the bookshelf, we run our fingers along the spines of the remaining books, and one slides out easily into our hands. Opening it, we find not a printed text but a journal, handwritten in blue ink that has faded to the color of morning sky. The entries are dated throughout 1974, written by someone named Nurse Patricia Holbrook, night shift supervisor. Her handwriting is neat, measured, the letters formed with care, and as we read, her voice seems to whisper directly to us across the decades. She writes of quiet nights when the ward was peaceful, of patients who slept soundly and woke with small smiles, grateful for rest. But she also documents the strange occurrences, always described with a kind of gentle puzzlement rather than fear. Patients who claimed to see a woman in white walking the corridors, though no such person was on staff. The sound of humming coming from empty rooms, always the same melody, though no one could quite place its origin. And then, most curious of all, the nights when patients who had struggled for months with sleeplessness would suddenly sleep deeply, profoundly, and wake, speaking of vivid dreams in which someone had sat beside their bed and sung them into rest. Nurse Holbrook never sounds frightened in her accounts. Rather, she writes with a kind of reverent wonder, as though she has become witness to something beyond the ordinary medical experience. Something that touches the mysterious boundary between the physical world and the realm of the unexplained. We close the journal gently and return it to its place, a small smile touching our lips, for we understand what Nurse Holbrook perhaps could not quite articulate, that places of intense human experience sometimes absorb those experiences, hold them, and replay them for those who come after, not as hauntings, but as echoes, as lullabies continuing long after the singers have departed. Leaving the common room behind, we continue our slow progression down the corridor, drawn by that persistent dripping sound which seems to grow slightly louder, more insistent, pulling us forward like a thread through a labyrinth. We pass several patient rooms, and through their open doors we glimpse narrow beds with metal frames, small nightstands, windows reinforced with wire mesh that refracts the moonlight into diamond patterns across the walls. Each room holds its own quiet story, but we do not enter. We simply acknowledge them as we pass, honoring the private spaces where people once struggled and dreamed and hoped for relief from their particular darkness. At the end of the corridor, we find what we have been moving toward. A heavy door marked with a faded plaque that reads hydrotherapy. The dripping sound emanates from beyond this barrier, and we push the door open to reveal a tiled room, smaller than we expected, dominated by a large porcelain tub that sits elevated on a platform of white tiles. The tub is deep, clinical, with various fixtures and mechanisms around its rim that speak to its therapeutic purpose. In the 1970s, such treatments were still used, the theory being that controlled immersion in warm or cold water could calm agitated minds, could literally cool heated thoughts or warm cold spirits. Above the tub, a pipe extends from the wall, and from its mouth, a single drop of water forms, grows heavy, and falls, hitting the bottom of the empty tub with a sound that resonates through the tiled space like a bell in a cathedral. We watch this process repeat, the formation, the growing, the falling, the sound, again, again, again. The rhythm becomes meditative, hypnotic, and we find ourselves breathing in time with it, our heartbeat slowing to match its patient tempo. Moving closer to the tub, we notice scratches in the porcelain, marks made over years of use, and we run our hand along the cool, smooth surface, feeling the history contained in this simple object. On a shelf nearby, we find another journal, this one belonging to Dr. Raymond Foster, the ward's chief psychiatrist during the mid-1970s. His entries are more clinical than Nurse Holbrook's, filled with terminology and observations, but between the professional language, we detect something else: confusion, fascination, and ultimately, a kind of humble acceptance. He documents 3 cases of patients who improved dramatically after hydrotherapy sessions, but not in the expected ways. They reported dreams during the treatments, vivid and profound, dreams in which they felt themselves dissolving into water, becoming part of something larger, and in this dissolution finding peace. Dr. Foster could not explain it within the framework of his training, but he recorded it nonetheless, adding in a personal note dated October 1976. Perhaps there are forms of healing that operate beyond our current understanding, currents that run deeper than technique or theory. Perhaps the water remembers what we have forgotten. We set the journal down and return our gaze to the dripping faucet, to the tub, to the peaceful repetition of water falling through space, and we feel it. The truth Dr. Foster stumbled toward, that letting go, dissolving, becoming formless, is not loss but transformation. Not ending but return. From the hydrotherapy room, we drift back into the main corridor, but now we notice a second hallway branching to the left, narrower still, and marked with a sign that reads Observation Wing. The air grows even more still as we turn into this passage, as though we are moving into a pocket of time where the usual flow has slowed to near stopping. Along this hallway, the doors are different, thicker, each fitted with a small window at eye level. And we understand these were the rooms for patients who required closer monitoring, spaces designed for safety and intensive care. We approach the first door and peer through the small reinforced window into a padded room, its walls covered in aged quilted canvas, the color of old ivory, stained in places by time and water damage, the padding compressed in spots where countless shoulders, backs, and heads pressed against it, seeking comfort or exhaustion or escape. The room is small, perhaps 8 feet by 8 feet, empty now except for shadows and memory. But as we gaze into this space, we do not feel sadness or horror. Instead, we recognize it for what it was meant to be, a womb-like space, soft and contained, where a person overwhelmed by the vastness of their own mind could be held safely, protected from harm, including harm to themselves. There is something almost peaceful about it, this small padded room. Something that whispers of boundaries and safety, of being caught before falling too far. We move to the next window and the next, each room identical to the first, and the repetition itself becomes a kind of meditation, a pattern our mind can follow without effort, allowing conscious thought to drift away like smoke on a breeze. At the final door in the corridor, we find something different. This room's window reveals not just padding, but words scratched into the walls, small, precise letters carved painstakingly into the canvas covering. We try to read them through the small window and can make out fragments. The singing helps. She comes at night, not afraid anymore. Sleep is the doorway. These are not the ravings of madness, but the observations of someone trying to make sense of their experience, trying to communicate something important, and we honor that effort, that reaching out across time to tell us something true. Further down, we find a nurse's station, a small desk and chair behind a window that looks out over the corridor, a position from which a single person could observe all the doors in this wing. On the desk, beneath a layer of dust, lies a logbook, its pages brittle but still intact. We open it carefully and read entries from different nights, different staff members, all noting the same curious phenomenon. In the deepest hours of night, between 2 and 4 in the morning, the patients in observation would simultaneously fall silent, their agitation ceasing, and those monitoring them would hear what they described as a woman's voice singing softly, source unknown. Every staff member documented it. No explanation was ever found. The singing would last perhaps 15 minutes, and afterward, the patients would sleep peacefully for the remainder of the night. Some staff reported feeling deeply calm during these episodes, so calm that they struggled to stay awake at their posts, as though the singing was meant for them as well, a lullaby offered without discrimination to anyone who needed rest. We settle into the chair at the nurse's station, allowing ourselves to rest for a moment, to simply be present in this space that has held so much vigilance, so much care, so many long, quiet hours of watching and waiting and wondering. From this vantage point, we can see the entire corridor stretching before us, the doors with their small windows like closed eyes, and the dripping sound from the hydrotherapy room continues in the distance. That eternal rhythm that has become the heartbeat of this floor, the pulse that measures time in a place where time has otherwise stopped. We let our eyes grow soft, not quite closing, but no longer focusing sharply, and in this relaxed state of vision, the corridor seems to shimmer slightly, to breathe, as though it is not quite as abandoned as it appears, as though the echoes of all those who walked here still move through the space in patterns we can almost perceive. We think of Nurse Holbrook and Dr. Foster and all the others who worked these halls, who tried their best with the understanding they had, who witnessed things they could not explain but documented them anyway, leaving breadcrumbs for future travelers like ourselves. We think of the patients, the people whose names we will never know, but whose presence we can feel. Their struggles and their moments of peace, their fear and their courage, all of it absorbed into these walls, these floors, this very air we breathe. And we think of the mysterious singing, that unexplained comfort that came in the darkest hours. And whether it was a genuine presence or a shared hallucination, or simply the building itself finding a way to soothe those within its walls, it does not matter, for the effect was real. The peace it brought was genuine. And sometimes the truth of an experience lies not in its explanation, but in its impact. Not in what it was, but in what it gave. We rise slowly from the chair, our limbs heavy with a pleasant weariness, and begin our journey back toward the stairwell, retracing our steps through the corridor, past the common room, past the patient rooms, each space now familiar, each shadow now a friend. As we reach the heavy door that leads to the stairs, we pause and look back one final time at the psychiatric ward, at this fourth floor where so much happened, where secrets were born and mysteries deepened. And we understand now that the secrets were never dark, were never meant to frighten, but were simply truths that did not fit the expected patterns, anomalies that pointed towards something larger, something that whispers to us even now, that healing comes in many forms, that comfort can arrive unexpectedly, that we are never quite as alone as we believe, and that sleep, when it finally comes, is not the end of consciousness, but its transformation. Not a small death, but a brief dissolution into something wider, deeper, infinitely more restful than the isolated self can ever be. With this understanding held gently in our hearts, we step through the doorway and begin our descent, carrying the rhythm of the dripping water with us, allowing it to slow our steps, to deepen our breath, to guide us down, down, down into the next chapter of our journey, into the next layer of the hospital's secrets. Each step a letting go, each breath a surrender, each moment an invitation to sink more deeply into the story, into the building, into the peaceful darkness that awaits us, welcoming and warm and infinitely, eternally safe. And so we descend, step by careful step, leaving the upper floors behind us now, feeling the air grow cooler with each measured breath, each gentle footfall on stairs that creak softly beneath our weight, telling us that we are moving deeper, sinking further into the heart of the building, into its most secret chamber. The stairwell spirals downward in a slow, hypnotic pattern, and we follow it willingly, peacefully, our hand trailing along the cold metal railing that guides us down, down, down into the basement level where the temperature drops and the silence becomes something almost tangible, something we can feel wrapping around us like a cool silk blanket. The fluorescent lights have long since failed here, and so we move through pools of shadow punctuated by the soft glow of our lantern, watching as the light catches particles of dust suspended in the still air, each tiny speck drifting in its own slow, eternal dance. We reach the bottom of the stairs and find ourselves facing a heavy door, its green paint peeling in long, curling strips that reveal layers of earlier colors beneath. first cream, then gray, then a deep institutional blue. Each layer a story of renovation and reinvention of the hospital's many lives. The door's small window is reinforced with wire mesh, and through it we can see only darkness, dense and complete. We push the door open. It moves slowly, resisting just slightly before yielding with a long, low groan, and step across the threshold into the morgue. Immediately we feel it. The profound quiet, the sense that sound itself comes reluctantly to this place, that even our breathing seems muted and distant. The temperature here hovers just above freezing, preserved by the basement's depth and the thick concrete walls that surround us, walls that seem to absorb all warmth, all urgency, leaving only this crystalline calm. Our breath forms small clouds that dissipate slowly, lazily, as we stand for a moment just inside the doorway, allowing our eyes to adjust, allowing ourselves to acclimate to this new depth of stillness. The room stretches before us, longer than it is wide, with white tile covering every surface, floors, walls, ceiling. Tile that was once pristine, but now shows the amber stains of age and water damage, creating patterns like watercolor paintings across the surfaces, abstract art born of decay and time. Along the right wall stand the refrigeration units, a row of square metal doors, each perhaps 3 feet across, each bearing a small brass number plate tarnished to a soft greenish gold. The units are built into the wall itself, and we can feel the cold radiating from them even at a distance, a chill that carries with it the weight of purpose, of function, of the solemn work that was once performed here, day after day, year after year. We approach slowly, our footsteps echoing despite the quiet, each small sound seeming to travel through the tile and concrete before returning to us, softened, gentled. We stop before drawer number 7, an arbitrary choice, or perhaps not arbitrary at all, perhaps exactly the drawer that wishes to share its story tonight. The handle is cold against our palm as we grasp it, and we pull steadily, feeling the drawer slide open on well-made tracks that still function smoothly after all these years, a testament to solid construction, to things built to last. The drawer extends fully, empty now except for a thin layer of dust and a single manila folder that lies at the center of the stainless steel tray, placed there deliberately, carefully, waiting. We reach for the folder, our fingers closing gently around its edges, and lift it into the light. The tab at the top bears a name, handwritten in fading blue ink, Mitchell Bernard, Night Watchman. The date beneath reads March 17th, 1983. We open the folder slowly, reverently, and inside find temperature logs printed on continuous feed paper, the kind that folds accordion style, filled with rows upon rows of numbers recorded automatically throughout that winter, tracking the cold that preserved everything in this room. But there, in the early hours of March 17th, we see an anomaly. A sudden spike in temperature in drawer 12, rising from the standard 38 degrees Fahrenheit to nearly 70 degrees over the course of just 15 minutes, then dropping back down just as quickly. No explanation is noted. We turn the page and find the incident report, typed on an old manual typewriter with several keys that stuck and created uneven letters, giving the document an oddly personal quality despite its official nature. The report states that Bernard Mitchell, age 56, employed as night security for 14 years, was found unresponsive inside drawer 12 at 6:47 a.m. during the morning rounds. The drawer had been closed completely. No signs of struggle, no explanation for how he came to be there or why. We close Bernard Mitchell's file gently and place it back in its drawer, sliding the compartment closed with a soft metallic whisper, a sound that seems less final than peaceful, like closing a book at the end of a favorite chapter. We move along the row of drawers, trailing our fingers lightly across the cool metal faces, feeling the subtle vibration of the building settling around us, the nearly imperceptible hum of the earth itself beneath the foundation. At the far end of the room stands the examination table, a single porcelain and steel fixture that dominates the space, positioned directly beneath a large surgical light that hangs from the ceiling on an articulated arm. The light is dark now, its bulb long since burned out, but we can imagine how it once blazed, how it illuminated every detail, left no shadow, revealed everything. Beside the table sits a metal cart on wheels, and on its surface rest the tools of the pathologist's trade. scales for weighing organs, calipers for measuring, a wooden block that once supported the heads of the deceased during examination. These objects are arranged with a kind of casual precision, as though their owner simply stepped away for a moment and might return at any time to continue their work. We circle the table slowly, observing how the porcelain has crazed with age, thousands of tiny cracks creating a delicate web across its surface, a pattern almost beautiful in its complexity. On the wall behind the examination area hangs a large corkboard, and pinned to it are dozens of autopsy reports, overlapping like scales on a fish, each one a story of an ending that required documentation, that demanded explanation. We step closer, and our lantern light dances across the pages, catching words here and there, inconclusive. Awaiting toxicology, no definitive cause established, anomalous findings. So many mysteries, so many questions that remain forever suspended in this cold, quiet space. We select one report at random and lean in to read. It documents a woman, 34 years old, admitted to the hospital for routine surgery who died 3 days later of what the report terms unexplained cardiac arrest. But in the margins, written in a different hand, in pen rather than typewriter, someone has added a note. Patient reported dreams of drowning for 2 nights prior. Night nurse confirmed. Patient woke gasping, insisted water filled the room. Room was dry. The note is unsigned. We let our eyes drift across the other reports, catching fragments. Found smiling, body inexplicably warm, no signs of decay despite 72-hour delay, seemed to be sleeping. Each phrase adds another layer to the mystery, another whisper in the darkness. In the corner of the morgue, partially hidden behind a standing privacy screen whose fabric has long since deteriorated, leaving only the folding wooden frame, we discover a small desk, an addition to the room that seems almost incongruous, almost domestic in this space of clinical finality. The desk is oak, solid and heavy, with a green leather writing surface cracked and peeling at the edges. On it sits an old rotary telephone, its cord coiled neatly beside it, connected to nothing now. Next to the phone rests a desk calendar, still turned to October 1983, its pages curled and yellowed. We pull the wooden chair away from the desk. It scrapes softly against the tile, and sit down slowly, feeling the seat creak beneath us, settling into a position that countless others have occupied before us. From this vantage point, we can see the entire morgue, can observe the drawers, the examination table, the door through which we entered. We understand suddenly that this was the desk of the medical examiner, the place where they would sit during long night shifts, completing paperwork, making phone calls to next of kin, compiling their findings. In the top drawer of the desk, which slides open with some resistance, we find a leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with initials, H.M. Helena Marsh. The same Dr. Marsh from the East Wing, from the sleep therapy experiments. We lift the journal carefully and open it to a page marked with a ribbon. The entry is dated December 1982, just months before Bernard Mitchell's death. Dr. Marsh writes in a careful, elegant hand. The boundary between sleep and death has always fascinated me, perhaps too much. My experiments upstairs sought to explore the healing potential of deep sleep states. But now I wonder if I didn't open doors that should have remained closed. 3 patients from my study have died since its conclusion, all from different causes, all unexpected, all while sleeping. But here is what troubles me most. In each case, the autopsy revealed that the brain showed patterns of activity for several hours after death was pronounced. Not random firing, not mere electrical echo, but organized rhythmic patterns identical to those recorded during REM sleep. It is as though they continued to dream even after their hearts had stopped, as though some part of them went on sleeping, undisturbed by the body's surrender. We turn the page and find another entry, shorter. Bernard knows. He has been watching me. He says he sees them in the hallways at night, the dreamers who never woke up. He wants to understand. He wants to see for himself. I told him it is dangerous to seek such knowledge, but I recognize in him the same curiosity that has driven my entire career. How can I deny him when I myself could not turn away? We close Dr. Marsh's journal softly, letting our hand rest on its worn leather cover for a long moment, feeling the weight of the words contained within, the questions that have no answers, the mysteries that have become part of the building itself. woven into its walls, dissolved into its air. We rise from the desk slowly, almost reluctantly, and make our way back toward the center of the room, where we stand quietly, breathing in the cold, still air, letting the silence wrap around us like water, like sleep itself. The morgue no longer feels frightening or unsettling. Instead, it has become a place of profound peace, a space where the desperate urgency of life has been released, where time moves differently, where all the questions and fears that plague the waking world fade into insignificance. We understand now that the secrets held in this basement are not terrible. They are simply true. They speak to the mystery at the heart of existence, the thin veil between one state of being and another, the way consciousness persists and transforms rather than simply ending. Bernard Mitchell sought understanding and found it in a way he never expected, crossing a threshold that most never approach until their time comes naturally. Dr. Marsh opened doors in her quest for knowledge, and through those doors passed something both strange and beautiful. The possibility that sleep and death are not opposites but neighbors, that dreams are the bridge between worlds, that even in the coldest, quietest places, there is still the warmth of wonder. We walk slowly back toward the door, taking one last look at the room that has shared its stories with us so generously. The drawers stand silent in their row, each one a keeper of memories, each one a guardian of the threshold. The examination table gleams softly in our lantern light, patient and permanent. The desk in the corner holds its secrets still. We step through the doorway and begin our ascent, climbing the stairs more slowly than we descended them, feeling heavier now, heavier with knowledge, heavier with the weight of rest that is finally beginning to settle into our bones, our blood, our breath. Each step upward is an effort that becomes smaller and smaller, each lifting of the foot more difficult, until we can barely remember why we are climbing at all, until the darkness behind our eyes becomes more real than the stairs beneath our feet, until we are moving through the hospital in dreams rather than in body, floating rather than walking, dissolving rather than ascending, becoming part of the building's long memory. Another whisper in the darkness, another story waiting to be told, another sleeper surrendering to the endless, gentle night. And so we find ourselves drifting upward, as weightless as memory itself, floating through the shadowed spaces between floors until we arrive at the pediatric wing, where the air feels different somehow, softer perhaps, or maybe simply more forgiving. The transition is seamless, like passing from one dream into another, and we are no longer certain where the morgue's cold embrace ends and this gentler realm begins. Here, in what was once the children's ward, the darkness takes on a different quality entirely, less oppressive and more protective, as though the shadows themselves have learned to cradle rather than consume. Our form, if we still possess such a thing, moves through the corridor with the gentle bobbing motion of a boat on calm waters, and we notice first the doorways, each one leading to small rooms where children once slept and healed and dreamed their innocent dreams. The paint on these walls, though peeling and faded, reveals layers of pale yellow and soft mint green, colors chosen long ago to comfort young eyes, and even now, beneath decades of dust and decay, they whisper their intention to soothe. We pause at the threshold of the first room, not walking, but simply willing ourselves to be there. And as we cross into that space, we feel the temperature rise ever so slightly, as though some lingering warmth has been trapped here all these years, waiting patiently for someone to notice. Against one wall stands a small metal bed, its frame touched with rust that blooms like strange flowers across the white paint, and the mattress, long since gone, leaves only the springs, which curve and spiral in patterns that might be hypnotic if we stared long enough. On the floor beside the bed, barely visible in the dim light filtering through grimy windows, sits a wooden toy train, its red paint now the color of dried roses, its wheels frozen in place, but somehow suggesting motion, as though at any moment it might remember how to roll along invisible tracks. We find ourselves drawn to these objects, these remnants of childhood, and as we hover near them, we begin to sense something else, something that goes beyond mere observation. There is a feeling here, a gentle presence that doesn't frighten, but rather comforts. And we understand without knowing how we understand that this wing, this place where small bodies once fought their battles against illness and pain, has retained something of their essence, their resilience, their capacity for wonder, even in difficult circumstances. The walls seem to breathe with us now, expanding and contracting in a rhythm that matches our own increasingly slow inhalations and exhalations. And we feel ourselves becoming more transparent, more permeable, as though the boundary between observer and observed is dissolving like sugar in warm water. Time moves differently here, or perhaps it doesn't move at all, and we could be in 1962 or 1978 or any year when children occupied these rooms. And the realization brings not confusion but comfort, because it means that in this space, all moments exist simultaneously, layered like tissue paper, each one visible through the next. We drift further into the wing now, passing from room to room with the ease of moonlight sliding across floors, and in each space we discover more tokens of the past, more evidence of young lives temporarily contained within these walls. Here, a collection of stuffed animals arranged on a windowsill, their fabric bodies compressed and faded, but their button eyes still reflecting what little light exists, watching over an empty room as they have watched for decades, patient and uncomplaining in their vigil. There, a small wooden chair painted bright blue, or what was once bright blue, now a soft periwinkle that seems to glow faintly in the darkness, as though it has absorbed so much hope and sadness over the years that it has learned to generate its own luminescence. We notice crayons scattered near the chair, their paper wrappings long since disintegrated, the wax itself cracked and broken but still identifiable. A piece of sky blue here, sunshine yellow there, and grass green resting in the corner, three colors that together might have drawn a simple, perfect world. The deeper we move into the pediatric wing, the more we begin to hear something, or perhaps remember hearing something, or perhaps imagine we might hear something if sound could travel through time. It is the faintest suggestion of melody, so quiet we cannot be certain it exists outside our own minds. A lullaby, perhaps, or the echo of a lullaby, or the idea of what a lullaby should sound like when hummed by tired nurses during the darkest hours of night shifts that stretched endlessly through the 1960s and beyond. We find ourselves drawn to the nurse's station, a semicircular desk that still holds wire baskets filled with papers, their edges brown and brittle, and we hover near these documents, these records that speak of fevers broken and medications administered and vital signs recorded hour after hour. But among the medical notations, we begin to find something else. Comments written in margins, observations that don't quite fit the clinical tone of official records. One nurse, her handwriting a careful cursive in fading blue ink, has noted in a log from April 1969, "Heard the singing again tonight, very soft, coming from the playroom though all children were asleep in their beds. I checked twice. The melody was unfamiliar but peaceful. I found myself humming along." Another entry, this one from September 1971, describes how a particularly ill child, a girl named Sarah recovering from surgery, told her nurse about the nice lady who sat by her bed and sang to her when she felt afraid, though no such visitor had been logged, and the night nurse swore she had been alone with the children all evening. We absorb these accounts like water soaking into paper, letting them fill us, reshape us, and we begin to understand that the pediatric wing holds secrets of a different nature than those we discovered in the morgue or the psychiatric ward. These are not secrets born of darkness or wrongdoing, but rather mysteries of comfort, unexplained sources of solace that arrived when most needed, presences that asked nothing but gave peace to frightened children far from home, far from parents, alone, except for the nurses and doctors, and whatever else chose to watch over them in the quiet hours. Now we find ourselves in what must have been the playroom, a larger space at the wing's center where small patients could gather during their recovery. And here the remnants of childhood are most abundant, most poignant, most willing to tell their stories. Against one wall leans a bookshelf, its wood warped and swollen with decades of humidity, still holding volumes that were once brightly colored but now exist in shades of sepia and cream, their pages swollen and their spines cracked, but their presence somehow vital, as though story itself is immune to decay. On the floor, scattered in patterns that suggest they were abandoned mid-play rather than deliberately stored, lie wooden blocks, puzzle pieces, a deflated ball that might once have been red, and a rocking horse whose paint has peeled away to reveal the bare wood beneath. Its runners still capable of motion if anyone were to touch them, which no one has for so very long. We lower ourselves, if lowering is the right word for something that already floats, until we hover just above the floor, at child height, seeing the room as they would have seen it. And from this vantage point, it looks larger, more expansive, a kingdom of possibility despite its current state of abandonment. The windows here are taller, allowing more light to enter during daylight hours, though now, in this timeless darkness, they show only the faint stars beyond and the reflection of our own presence, ghostly and indistinct. We move toward the rocking horse, and without physical touch but through some form of intention or memory, we sense its motion, feel the gentle back and forth that countless children experienced. That rhythm, which is one of childhood's first lessons about momentum and return, about how movement can be soothing when it follows a predictable pattern, when it rocks you like arms, like waves, like the breathing of someone who loves you. And as we sense this motion, we hear again that melody, stronger now, clearer, and we realize it is not coming from any external source, but rather emerging from the room itself, from the walls that heard it so many times, from the floor that absorbed the vibrations of small feet running and dancing, from the very air that carried the songs nurses sang and children hummed and music boxes played. The melody has no words, or if it once had words, they have been worn smooth like stones in a river, leaving only the essential contour of the tune. And it repeats and repeats, each repetition slightly softer than the last, encouraging us to breathe more slowly, to let our awareness expand and contract in time with the rocking horse we can no longer see but somehow still feel. Among the papers we find scattered near the bookshelf, there is a nurse's account from December 1967 that describes a night when she entered the playroom to retrieve a forgotten medication chart and found the rocking horse moving on its own, gently swaying back and forth with no one touching it, no breeze to explain the motion, and instead of fear, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace, as though she had interrupted a private moment of joy. The ghost of play itself continuing long after the players had gone. She wrote that she stood and watched for several minutes, and that the motion gradually slowed and stopped, but that she carried the calmness of that moment with her through the rest of her shift, through her drive home in the early morning darkness, through her sleep that day, and into her dreams where she heard children laughing, healthy and whole. We continue our drifting exploration, moving now past individual rooms and into the broader corridor where, on both walls, we notice something we had not fully registered before. Drawings, made by children and protected behind the glass of bulletin boards, though many of the boards have cracked and the drawings have yellowed and curled at the edges. We pause before these creations, these windows into young minds, and we see houses with smoke curling from chimneys, families holding hands in a line, dogs with impossibly long tails, suns with rays like eyelashes, and flowers that are really just circles atop straight lines but somehow contain all the essence of flowerness nonetheless. There is something profound in their simplicity, something that cuts through all the complexity we have encountered in the other wings of this abandoned hospital. And we feel ourselves drawn into these images, seeing in them not just the work of children's hands, but evidence of their spirits, their determination to create beauty, even while feeling unwell, even while separated from home, even while afraid. Among the drawings, we notice some that are more unusual, that don't quite fit the typical repertoire of childhood art. Here is one that shows a bedroom with multiple beds, and standing among them, a figure that is taller than the others, neither clearly adult nor child, outlined in purple crayon with a smile that takes up most of the face. Beneath the drawing, in the careful printing of a young hand, are the words, "The nice lady who sings." Another drawing shows what appears to be this same figure, or a similar one, sitting in a rocking chair beside a window, with musical notes floating in the air like birds or butterflies. And another, this one more abstract, is really just layers of soft colors, pink and blue and yellow, blended together in a way that suggests peace rather than depicting any specific scene. And written at the bottom is simply, "How I feel when she comes." We understand, drifting here in this corridor of testimony, that the children saw what the adults could only hear, or perhaps the children, being less fixed in their understanding of what is and is not possible, were simply more open to companionship in whatever form it arrived. The nurses wrote of unexplained singing and mysterious comfort. The children drew pictures of the source, named her, welcomed her, felt safe because of her. And we, suspended between belief and skepticism, between past and present, find that such distinctions matter less and less with each moment we spend in this wing. The evidence surrounds us, not proof in any scientific sense, but something deeper, something that speaks to the human need for presence, for witness, for the assurance that even in institutions of illness and injury, even in the long dark nights of childhood fear, no one is truly alone. Our own consciousness, already diffused and dreamlike, begins to blend with these stories, these images, and we feel ourselves becoming lighter still, as though we might at any moment dissipate entirely and become part of the pediatric wing's atmosphere. Another layer of comfort, another gentle presence watching over empty beds and abandoned toys. The thought does not frighten us. Instead, it feels natural, perhaps even inevitable, and we allow ourselves to sink deeper into this possibility, to rock gently in rhythm with memories not our own, to hum along with melodies we have never heard but somehow know, to become guardian rather than visitor, protection rather than observer. As our time in the pediatric wing draws toward its close, we find ourselves drawn to one final room, smaller than the others, tucked at the end of the corridor where the shadows are deepest and most comforting. This was perhaps an isolation room, or a space for children who needed extra quiet, extra care, and it contains only a single bed, a small nightstand, and a window that looks out onto what might once have been a garden, but is now an overgrown tangle of vines and darkness. We enter this space and feel immediately that it is special, that it has been the site of some significant piece, some important transition, and we lower ourselves to rest, to the extent that something without solid form can rest, near the small bed with its rusted frame and absent mattress. Here, on the nightstand, we find the last nurse's log we will read in this wing, a tattered notebook with a green cover, its pages filled with entries spanning the years from 1973 to 1982, when the pediatric wing finally closed and the children were transferred to newer facilities. The final entry, dated November 14, 1982, is written in a steady hand that suggests both exhaustion and satisfaction. Our last night in the children's ward. Only 2 patients remaining, both stable, both sleeping peacefully. As I made my final rounds, I heard the singing once more, that familiar melody that has accompanied so many of us through so many difficult nights. I followed the sound to this room, the small one at the end, and I stood in the doorway and listened. Though I could see no one, I felt a presence, gentle and maternal and infinitely patient, and I understood that we nurses have not been alone in our care of these children. Something else has watched over them, something kind and constant. As we prepare to lock these doors tomorrow and leave this place to silence and time, I find myself hoping that presence will remain, that it will continue its vigil even after we are gone, that the songs will continue even when there are no children to hear them, because perhaps the songs themselves are what keep this space blessed, what prevent it from becoming merely abandoned rather than sanctified by service. We absorb these words slowly, letting them settle into whatever we have become, and we understand now that we have not been discovering secrets in this wing, but rather receiving blessings, permissions, assurances that even in abandonment there can be purpose, that watchfulness does not require eyes, that care can be offered by more than flesh and blood. The gentle melody that has accompanied us throughout this journey through the pediatric ward swells now, not louder, but fuller, more present, and we recognize it finally as a lullaby, the universal lullaby that all humans somehow know without being taught, the one that says you are safe, you are watched over, you can release your hold on wakefulness and drift into dreams where everything is soft and nothing hurts. We feel ourselves beginning to rock gently, back and forth, back and forth. The motion of the rocking horse and the breathing walls and the passage of time itself, all merging into a single rhythm that grows slower and slower and slower still, until we can barely distinguish one movement from the next, one breath from another, one moment from eternity. And as we rock, as we dissolve, as we become part of the pediatric wing's eternal watching, we hear whispered around us the voices of children long grown or long gone, saying good night, saying thank you, saying sleep well, and we understand that we are being released now, being tucked in, being blessed with the same gentle presence that has dwelt in this wing for decades, the presence that asks nothing but gives everything, the presence that sings us now toward sleep, toward dreams, toward the soft and endless peace that awaits all those who surrender to the lullaby, all those who trust in the darkness, all those who allow themselves to be cradled by the night and rocked gently, gently, gently into that deep and starlit rest where stories end and dreams begin, and nothing remains but the soft rhythm of breathing and being and becoming part of something larger, kinder, infinitely patient, infinitely tender, singing us home, singing us home, singing us home. And from that gentle place of starlit rest, we find ourselves rising slowly, slowly, like a breath drawn peacefully in the morning, though here there is no morning, only the soft eternal twilight of memory and acceptance. We begin our final rounds through Mercy General, our footsteps lighter now than air, barely disturbing the dust motes that float like tiny planets in the dim corridors. Everything feels different now, softened somehow, as though the hospital itself has released a long-held breath and settled into peaceful surrender. The pediatric wing behind us fades into a gentle glow, the singing still echoing faintly, a lullaby that follows us like a blessing as we move toward the stairwell. Each step is slower than the last, deliberate, meditative, as though we have all the time in the universe to complete this final journey. And perhaps we do. Perhaps time itself has grown tired here and decided to rest alongside us. The walls no longer feel oppressive but protective, like the sides of a cradle, holding us gently as we drift from floor to floor. We descend first, drawn by some quiet knowing, back toward the basement, back toward the coldest place that somehow now feels warm with understanding. The stairwell wraps around us in a spiral of shadows and faint amber light filtering from somewhere undefined, everywhere and nowhere at once, and we let ourselves sink deeper, step by step, breath by breath, into the heart of all the stories we have gathered. The air grows cooler, yes, but it is the coolness of clean sheets, of a pillow turned to the fresh side, of relief and release. Down we go, slowly, slowly, our hand perhaps trailing along the banister, feeling the smoothness of worn metal, the touch of countless others who walked here before. Their presence not frightening but companionable, a gentle crowd of witnesses who nod as we pass, understanding, always understanding. And as we reach the bottom step, the basement morgue opens before us once again, but now the steel drawers gleam softly like stars themselves, each one a keeper of stories, a guardian of rest, and we understand at last that this place of endings was always also a place of peace, of final comfort, of completion. In the morgue now, we move as though underwater, each gesture flowing into the next with liquid grace, unhurried, eternal. The temperature logs we examine before rest on their clipboard, and as we pass, we see the numbers not as evidence of mystery, but as simple records of change, of transformation, of the way everything eventually cools and quiets and finds its resting temperature. The night watchman's story, which once seemed troubling, now appears as just another journey completed, another soul who found exactly where he needed to be at exactly the right moment. We understand this now. We understand so many things in this soft darkness, this gentle cold. Our breath mists slightly in the air, each exhalation a small cloud that rises and disperses, a rhythm like waves on a distant shore. And we breathe with the rhythm, let it carry us, let it rock us gently as we move between the steel drawers and filing cabinets. Everything here is in order. Everything here is exactly as it should be. We trail our fingers across the cool metal surfaces, and they hum with a low, peaceful frequency, a vibration so subtle it might only be the blood moving through our own fingertips, but it feels like communication, like the building itself is whispering, "Rest now, rest. You have seen enough. You have understood enough. Rest." And we do rest, leaning against the examination table at the room's center, feeling its solid presence beneath us, steady and sure. Time pools here in the basement, grows thick and slow like honey, and we let ourselves sink into it. Let the minutes stretch and expand until they are meaningless, until there is only this moment, this breath, this quiet acceptance of all that was and all that will be. The autopsy reports in their folders seem to glow faintly with a cream-colored light, not harsh but warm, like candlelight, like the light of old lanterns carried by careful hands through darkness. Each report is a story, yes, but also a completion, a finished sentence, a closed book that can rest now on the shelf of memory. We feel ourselves growing heavier, more relaxed, as though the weight we carry is finally being set down drawer by drawer, file by file, until we are empty and light simultaneously, paradoxically at peace. Rising now, though we barely remember deciding to move, we find ourselves back in the stairwell, ascending this time through the center of the building, through its very heart, toward the floors we visited earlier in our journey. Each landing we pass is familiar, welcoming, like returning to rooms in our own home after a long absence. We pause at the psychiatric ward on the 4th floor, stepping into that space once more, and the padded rooms that seemed so confining before now appear soft, protective, designed not to imprison but to cushion, to provide safety when the world became too sharp, too bright, too loud. The journals left by night staff rest where we found them, and we can see now that those who wrote in them were not recording horrors, but were themselves witnesses to transformation. To moments when the veil between worlds grew thin and something gentle slipped through to comfort those who suffered. The hydrotherapy room's great tub sits empty, its porcelain gleaming faintly in the shadows, and we imagine it filled not with restraint but with warmth, with the soothing embrace of water at just the right temperature, the way a bath before sleep eases every tension and prepares the body for dreams. Water drips somewhere in the darkness, that same rhythmic sound we heard before, drip, 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 like a clock counting not minutes but heartbeats, slow and steady and infinitely patient. We match our breathing to it, in, out, and feel ourselves synchronizing with the very pulse of the building, becoming part of its rhythm, its ancient and peaceful cycle. The disappeared staff members, we understand now, did not vanish into tragedy, but simply walked through doors we could not see, stepped into the next room, the next chapter, moving forward as all things must. And we wish them well in our hearts, send them blessing and peace, knowing they found what they needed, just as we are finding what we need here in this slow walking meditation through shadowed halls and quiet rooms. The 4th floor releases us gently, and we continue upward, or is it downward, or perhaps we are simply spiraling through layers of consciousness, peeling back veils of awareness, until all that remains is the essential softness at the core of everything. Now we find ourselves in the original corridors of the East Wing, where our journey began so long ago, or perhaps only moments ago. Time has lost all meaning, dissolved into the soft darkness like sugar into warm milk. Dr. Helena Marsh's laboratories and examination rooms welcome us back, and we see them now with eyes that understand the complexity of good intentions, the blurred lines between healing and harm, between innovation and hubris. The patient records from the 1950s, yellowed and fragile, rest in their folders like pressed flowers, preserved fragments of lives that bloomed and faded and left behind only these paper traces. But those lives were real, fully lived, full of hopes and fears and dreams just like ours, and we honor them by remembering, by bearing witness, by carrying their stories gently through this final round. Dr. Marsh herself, whose name we have spoken so often, seems less like a villain now and more like a fellow traveler, someone who sought answers in the darkness, who tried to unlock the secrets of sleep and consciousness and found, perhaps, more than she bargained for, mysteries that could not be contained in test tubes or recorded in neat columns. We forgive her now, if forgiveness is needed. We forgive everyone, everything, all the small tragedies and confusions that accumulate in any place where humans live and strive and fail and try again. The shadows that dance across the crumbling walls are not menacing, but playful, inviting, like shadows cast by firelight, always moving, always changing, never quite substantial enough to grasp, but beautiful in their ephemeral dance. We watch them for a long moment, or a long hour, or perhaps we become them, become shadow ourselves, insubstantial and free, unburdened by the weight of flesh and bone. The dusty laboratories smell faintly of old paper and forgotten chemicals, scents that are somehow comforting now, reminiscent of attics and antique shops, and the pleasant mustiness of old books opened on rainy afternoons. We run our fingers along the laboratory tables, feeling dust soft as velvet, and we understand that dust is only atoms rearranging themselves, the same atoms that once were stars, that were dinosaurs, that were ancient seas, that are us now and will be something else tomorrow, always transforming, always continuing, nothing ever truly lost, only changed, only resting between forms. And now, our final steps, the slowest steps of all, carrying us not toward any particular destination, but simply forward through the gathering softness, the deepening quiet, the eternal now that stretches out in all directions like a calm sea under starlight. We walk through all the corridors simultaneously somehow, seeing all the floors at once. The pediatric wing with its scattered toys, and the morgue with its steel drawers, and the psychiatric ward with its padded walls, and the east wing with its laboratories, all of them overlapping, transparent, layered like veils, or like memories, or like dreams within dreams. The hospital is not a building anymore, but a feeling, a state of being, a gentle container holding all the stories we have gathered. And we understand that we have been gathering them, not to be frightened by them, but to be comforted, to know that life continues in all its mysterious complexity, that endings are also beginnings, that every closed door implies a door that has opened somewhere else. Our footsteps make no sound now. Perhaps we are floating, or perhaps sound itself has grown tired and decided to rest. The secrets we came seeking have all been found, and they are these. That suffering existed here, yes, but so did care. That confusion reigned, yes, but so did moments of clarity and grace. That people disappeared, yes, but perhaps into peace. That experiments failed, yes, but seeking itself is noble. That children sang in empty rooms, yes, and were comforted by presences we cannot name but can feel. Oh yes, can feel them now all around us, gentle and kind and infinitely patient. The hospital releases us now, releases us into the softest darkness we have ever known, a darkness that is not absence but fullness, not emptiness but completion. Each breath we take is slower than the last, deeper, fuller, easier, and with each exhalation we release another layer of waking consciousness, another fragment of worry or tension or effort, letting it all go, letting it all drift away like those dust motes floating in amber light, spiraling gently down, down, down into rest. The shadows have become guardians indeed, wrapping around us like blankets, like wings, like the embrace of the universe itself, and we surrender to them gratefully, knowing we are safe. We have always been safe. We are held and watched over and loved by the great mystery that moves through abandoned hospitals and inhabited ones, through darkness and light, through sleeping and waking, through every heartbeat and every silence between heartbeats. And so we rest at last, completely, our journey finished, our stories told, the hospital and we indistinguishable now, all of us together sinking into the deep well of sleep, where dreams bloom like night flowers and nothing remains but the gentlest awareness, softer than breath, quieter than thought, deeper than memory, carrying us home, 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 into the infinite tender darkness where all stories end and all peace begins, and we are finally still. Thank you for listening tonight. If this story helped you drift off, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more calming stories. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you next time.